Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today in this session, I'm going to talk about election tools for newsrooms. A lot of the tools that I'll look at today, we've actually touched on throughout this training series, but this will be a refresher and also a demonstration of how to use those tools specifically for election coverage. Once again, there's my Twitter handle and email. Feel free to link up with me on Twitter or send me an email if you have any questions. Here is the site, g.co/news training, where you can find more training modules on all of the tools that we'll look at today, as well as more from the Google News Initiative. So I mentioned you can register to give feedback and apply, well, not apply, you get a certificate, but register for a little certificate that you can share on social media or your LinkedIn page, wherever. So the themes of all of these trainings have been grouped into these three categories: develop digital reporting skills, explore new storytelling formats, and find new ways to fight misinformation. Because I broke the training material up into shorter 1-hour sessions, they don't necessarily fit precisely into these three categories, but for today, you can request a certificate under explore new storytelling formats. I'll share the link for that certificate and feedback form at the end of this session, and I'll also put it in the email handout. As usual, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll pause periodically as well to take your questions. Today, I'm going to look at mapping electoral districts. So getting started with making a map where you're showing information by electoral districts or ridings. I'll look at how to do that in Flourish and in Google Maps. Then I'm going to look at how to create an election database of your own using Google Forms and templates in Flourish Studio. Then we'll revisit trends and pinpoint. So two tools that we did look at already in this training series, but we'll revisit those with some election-specific demonstrations and examples. So making maps, just to step back a little bit, whether you're making a Google map or a Flourish map, when we're talking about adding regions like electoral districts or ridings to a map, you're looking at a shape file, a KML file, or a GeoJSON file. So Google Maps takes only KML files when it comes to making a region or a boundary on a map, and Flourish takes GeoJSON files. So I'll show you how to convert, essentially. If you can only find geographic data in a shapefile, I'll show you a tool for converting to either KML or a GeoJSON file, so you can use it in Maps or in Flourish Studio. If you're not already familiar with Flourish Studio, it's not a Google tool, but it is I'll drop the link in the chat here so you can take a look as we go. It is essentially a data viz tool. I've heard that it's, I haven't tried Data Wrapper, but I've heard that it's similar to Data Wrapper. It's a freemium tiered tool. So with free access, a free account, you get access to a lot of the templates they have on offer. With a paid account, an enterprise or newsroom account, you get access to all of the templates they have to offer. So let's take a look at Google Maps, first of all. So you're looking at here, this example on this slide is, and this comes from Capital Daily. This is an example of simply adding points to a map. What we're going to look at today is how to add regions, as I mentioned, to a map, so representing electoral districts or ridings. So this is not an election map, but an example from Matthew Black, a journalist in Edmonton, of what this kind of region looks like, what the region looks like on a Google map. So most, if not, first of all, in terms of finding the shape file you need to show electoral districts or ridings. Most, if not all, provinces have an open data catalog. So elections, that could be a municipal or a provincial open data catalog or a federal open data catalog. When searching for data, I looked up I think either the last or the next provincial elections. It was in the Northwest Territories. So I just Googled something like this, Northwest Territories, electoral district map. It took some clicking through, but what I found eventually took me here to actually the federal open government portal. And here I found this data set, electoral district boundaries. So when you're searching, the search term that I use when I'm looking for geospatial data to make a map, so electoral district or riding, open data, the name of your location, boundaries, and usually if you don't immediately find what you're looking for on your jurisdiction's open data website, you can find it through search terms like that. So here we've got electoral district boundaries, a compilation of the boundaries of the 19 Northwest Territories electoral district. I would obviously have to check if this is the latest data set as of 2012. And then I simply download the zip file here. So if I want to use this, like I said, in either Google Maps or Flourish, I need to convert it. So Maps takes only KML boundary files and Flourish takes only GeoJSON boundary files. There are different tools you can use to do this conversion. I like this one called Map Shaper. So Map Shaper is a way to edit map data, but also convert it into different file formats. I'll drop this link in the chat. So I'm just going to pause for a minute while I bring up a short video of this process. Are there any questions so far? Okay, sorry, just bear with me for another moment here. So here I'm just going to walk you through the steps of converting a zip file to a KML file. So I'm here in Map Shaper. I'm going to select that downloaded zip file of the Northwest Territories electoral district and open it up in Map Shaper. Import. Step one, go to the console and I'm entering this code, so -proj WGS84. I'll include links to all of this, but I enter this code. This is to change the projection of the map, hit enter, and then I'm exporting as a KML file. And then from there, and we'll walk through this in a live demo, I can import that KML file into a Google map. So here I am in Google Maps. I'm going to just over here on the drop-down menu, under saved, regardless of whether you've created a map yet or not. I'll go to this tab, Maps, and then down below, Create Map. So from here, we can just call this, let's say, Northwest Territories for now. So I'm going to import my KML file that I just converted. And here we have the 19 electoral districts mapped onto my Google map for the Northwest Territories. So you'll notice one thing, all of these are untitled. So whether you're uploading a CSV file, for example, with points onto a Google map, or whether you're uploading a regional regions file like this with shapes onto your Google map, you can take a look at the data set, the sheet that you've just uploaded. Here, open data table. So I can see all of the data that is displayed on this map. To show the labels on each of these regions, the electoral districts, I'm going to click up here and set as title column. Now, when I close this, I can see that I've got the name of each of these electoral districts on my preview page, and this will be how someone views the map. So instead of untitled, etc., they've got the name of each of these maps. Any questions so far? And again, there'll be a recording of this video, and I'll also include steps in the handout. So from here, I could add, if I wanted to add another layer with, say, points, maybe I have a CSV file of voting locations. So I could add layer and simply import another file that would show on top of these regions. I'm going to delete that. We don't need that for now. Instead, you can also add, if I have any other data set with values related to those boundaries, those electoral districts, I can also merge that into the layer to show, for example, as we saw in the map of COVID rates in Edmonton, to show shading or changes between these regions. So I found this data set from the Elections Northwest Territories website. So it's a big report just with stats from the last election, ballots cast, and ballots cast by electoral district. So in other words, voter turnout. So that's something, ahead of election, I might want to visualize on a map, showing, in all of these electoral districts, which have the, for example, higher rates of voter turnout, or how does voter turnout compare? You can see, though, that this is embedded in a PDF. Depending on the jurisdiction, across Canada, there's sort of different standards of access to data, or different levels of availability to data. Having a table embedded in a PDF like this is obviously not very user-friendly from a data visualization perspective, which is also sort of a good reason, I thought, to use Northwest Territories. But in terms of getting this data out of the table, I'm going to revisit Pinpoint. So let me stop sharing for a moment. For those of you who weren't here for the Pinpoint presentation, I'll just drop a link in the chat, and I think that's a quick link. Try that. If not, I'll find the other link for you. And I see a question here from David. When you import your KML file, does Google auto size in your view? I'm not sure what you mean. Can you clarify?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So when you do the import and it's showing the visualization of your file, will your Google window auto size to I guess its best size as you're doing the import? So what you're seeing, and what you have showed us, did you have to zoom in to see that, or is it just sort of what Google gives you after you import?
No, so I didn't have to zoom in. So the view we saw, I'll just bring it up again. This view we saw when I uploaded the KML file and opened it up. This is, I didn't have to make any changes. It automatically sized like this. One thing I'll note, though, initially I converted this zip file, so the Northwest Territories electoral districts zip file, using Google Earth. There's lots of tools out there to make these kind of file conversions, but when I found it was too big. Google Maps wouldn't accept the KML file. It was too large. When I used Map Shaper, and when I did that first step of changing the coordinate system, that dash proj WGS84, I'm not an expert on this, but I think that was able to compress the file so that when it was converted to KML, it worked beautifully in Google Maps. So sort of, I guess, to answer your first question, it does, in the KML file does size automatically, but depending on the tool you use to convert that KML file, Google Maps may not accept it if it's too large. So what did I want to show you? Oh yeah, Pinpoint. For those of you who weren't here for the Pinpoint session, Pinpoint is essentially a research tool from Google that allows you to do a few things. One, upload, I'll bring you to the Explore page first of all. One, upload large collections of documents and pull out frequently occurring people names, place names, search for key terms. This is sort of what it looks like from a reader point of view. But Pinpoint also has this great extract structured data function that allows you to really easily grab a table and other structured data from a single document or a whole collection of documents. So I used, here we are, I essentially uploaded that PDF into a pinpoint collection. So a single collection was just, well, just one document, 2 documents here, but then I clicked extract structured data. I'm going to scroll down and find the table I'm interested in, ballots cast by electoral district. Then I use the table function up here to grab what I want. I'm just going to go, I don't want the total. I'm going to just sort of adjust the boundaries here. You can see that I can line it up. I'm just dragging and dropping, but I've lined it up with the boundaries, the borders of the table. And then I save the table when I'm happy with it. And you can see here in the preview, it's given me, you know, a tabular CSV format of that table. So when I click extract up here on the right, it will download a CSV file. So pinpoint, you know, if you're doing any kind of data work around elections, particularly at a municipal level where data tends to be in, you know, PDFs more than CSV or more data friendly files, you might want to consider getting pinpoint just as a table extraction tool. So I've got that table downloaded. I'm going to then upload it into a Google Sheet. And I'll just share my screen again here. So here is that file that I extracted through Pinpoint. So it's got the electoral district, as well as number of candidates, polling divisions, voter turnout, and a validation link. So this links back to where it actually appears. Oh, sorry, there's an error because I'm in a different account, but this will link back to your where it appears in your Pinpoint account, where the document appears in your Pinpoint account. So from here, before I merge this with my map, because remember, I want to add voter turnout numbers onto this map, I need to make sure that the names of each electoral district are match exactly. So I had to make a few edits here already. I did that already. I think here Decho was 2 words instead of 1. I made sure, for example, Mackenzie Delta here, I made sure that was, you know, hyphen, no spaces, to make sure that it matches exactly with all of these. Then I would sort of re-download this as a CSV file. So download as CSV. And then from here, I'm going to go to layer options, re-import and merge matching items. I just want to make sure I have the right file here. So it's asking you again, you want to match your column, which would be, you can take a sneak peek here. You can see here name is empty. So make sure you are clicking the right columns, electoral district, matched with electoral district. And we should have 100% matches. It'll let you know if there's any line in this column that doesn't match. And now when I look at my data table, I can see under each electoral district row, I've got this new data, including voter turnout as a percentage. And this also appears on each of the pop-up boxes. So some of this will be irrelevant to readers. I don't necessarily want to display all of this or much of this. If I make changes to one of these pop-up boxes, and again, I just clicked on the box, clicked on the little edit pencil, and then I can uncheck whatever information I don't want to display. That will apply to all of the rest of my regions. So that information stays in the data table, it's just not displayed. So from there, I can style my map according to the new data I've added, in this case, voter turnout. So I'm clicking under individual styles, and I'm going to group places by data column. So voter turnout as percentage, immediately it's created these categories, but to me, it makes more sense to have ranges, to have sort of this color-coded shading to show less voter turnout to more voter turnout. And I can sort of change the gradient as I like. So in a nutshell, just demonstrating adding a region, a KML file to a Google map, and then merging that with a matching data set to be able to show differences in each of the regions. Are there any questions? Any questions about that? I'll just pause for a minute before we move on. Okay. So Flourish, we'll look at the same process now in Flourish. One of the reasons why you might want to use Flourish instead of Google Maps if you're doing an election map is that you can live update a Flourish map. So there, you might remember there used to be a function in Google Maps where you could connect a Google Sheet to your map, and anytime data was updated in your Google Sheet, it would be updated in your Google Map. It's not possible to do that in Maps anymore, but we do see Flourish used for this kind of use. So I'll show you just briefly an example here from the National Post. So this is a live election map they did that was updated throughout election night, was refreshed automatically. Each of the ridings or each of the regions was displayed like this, updated throughout the night, and then readers could click and sort of see how the votes were tallying up. So it's a bit of I don't have time essentially to go through the live update, how to connect your live sheet to a Flourish map, but I will walk you through how to start a map in Flourish, and then point you towards a step-by-step resource to show how to make a map live, the way that the National Post did with the last provincial election. So I'm going to just open up Flourish. I'll sign in, sorry. So Flourish has this huge menu of templates. The map we're going to look at is the projection map template. So you can see here that it has a lot of auto templates already made, but unfortunately none for Canada. So we have to essentially start with a blank. But actually, first, let's go back and just take a look at one of the other templates. So here's France, for example. So when you upload your regions, your GeoJSON file into Flourish, and Flourish only accepts GeoJSON, it'll look like this. So when you see these little shapes, that's a good thing. That means your upload has worked correctly. So again, my first step again would be to start in Map Shaper. I'm going to select that same zip file. I'm going to, do the same change in projection coordinates, proj WGS 84. This is all laid out on a Flourish help page, by the way, Flourish FAQ page, and I'll link to that. Hit enter. I can see it's changed. It's stretched out, so that's good. And then export, this time as a GeoJSON file. And then within Flourish, I'll open a blank template, open my data page. Here you'll see two regions tab, regions and regions geometry. I have to essentially upload the same GeoJSON file into both of these. So I'll start with regions geometry, upload data, select the GeoJSON file that I just exported from Map Shaper. And I can see it's picked up the shape of each of these electoral districts. That's great. I need to, first of all, indicate the geometry column, which is column A, and then an ID column. So in this case, I'll select B, column B, the name of the electoral district as my ID column. So this column must contain values that match the ID values in my regions sheet. Under the regions tab, I have to re-upload that same GeoJSON file. And then I have to match it. And now when we look at our preview tab, you can see up here, it's put the Northwest Territories regions. Click back and forth between auto and world. Sometimes I have to do this a few times, sort of click back and forth to make it show up like this. And then you can play around with the projections. I'm not, an expert Flourish user. You can find lots of support documents and help documents advising on the best projection you might want to choose, but I'm just making it a little larger here under the Baker projection. So this is it. This is sort of your starting point. Now you've got a base from which you can work in Flourish. And if we do the same thing, again, I want to add, say, information, add data, voter turnout for each of these regions. I'll go back to my data page. Now, I'm not adding points, for example, voting stations. I'm not adding lines, for example, distance between voting stations. I'm adding data about those regions, about those boundaries. So I do that under the Regions tab. You can see I've already got options here to add a column to label or color by or group. Up here under upload data, similar to like I did with Google Maps, I'm going to upload data and merge. And then I'll use that same CSV file that I pulled out of the PDF using Pinpoint. So it's just saying, okay, match your columns again. Yes, electoral district, electoral district. It's saying there are 0 rows that don't have a match. That's a good thing. So I'll merge now. And now I've got my new columns, so my new data associated with each electoral district. And I can, for example, color by voter turnout as a percentage. And here I've got a similar sort of gradient that I can use to display at a glance differences between these electoral districts. From here, there's a lot of tinkering you can do with the look of this map, with the coloring, with labels, pop-up boxes. Under footer, you can even add your own, your own publication's logo. I won't get into that now, I don't have time, but just to give you sort of an idea of how to make a base map in Flourish. So I'll just pause there and see if there's any other questions or comments, particularly from anyone who might has happened to use Flourish Maps or Google Maps at all. Feel free to weigh in on how it's worked for you. In the meantime, I'm just going to get set up with the next part. So the next piece I want to look at is using Google Forms to create your own database. So if you're not familiar with Google Forms, basically it's a template for making a survey or making a form. If you have a Gmail account, if you have a Google Drive, you have access to forms. So here's an example of a form that I made, and this is based off of an idea, actually, again from Capital Daily News. But you can see, first of all, this is just a candidate questionnaire. So this is a form that I might send out to prospective or election candidates to get information, for, basics like name, position. You can see this is a fake one, so I put pretend position, fake name, where they're from, top priorities for if they were elected. And then from there, sorry, I'll just close this. I can use that information to, again, make my own visual, or in this case, to make a searchable table, a searchable database of candidates. So this is exactly what Capital Daily did during the last provincial election in BC. This is a Victoria-based news outlet. So you'll see here, these are the tables. These are templates available in Flourish, and I'll look at it in Flourish. But essentially what the team did was they created a questionnaire like this using Google Forms. I'll show you just for a second my view of that Google form, so how it looks from the editor perspective. So here's how the form looks when I'm editing it. I can add questions here. I can decide how I want the question to be answered, so short answer or a checkbox or a drop down. I can make questions mandatory, so someone can't submit the form unless they answer this particular question. And under settings, I can also add security settings, like for example, email addresses are collected by default. All questions have to be answered. Users will receive a confirmation message once they fill in the form. So I can customize the settings of my form. And then once I'm ready, let me just delete this question. Once I'm ready, send via link. I'll shorten that URL. Copy, and then I can share it just like this, so anyone can access it. So from there, as people fill in this form, and in fact, if you want to go to that link and fill in the form and see how it starts to populate, please go ahead and do so. We won't do the full template example with this, but as this form starts to populate, as people fill it in, will receive all of those answers in a sheet. So here I've got my columns with the timestamp, when it was filled out, and then the questions. So what Capital Daily did, and I'm just going to go back to my other screen for a moment. What Capital Daily did was essentially upload those responses from their candidate response form into this table visualization. So this is already filled in with an example template, but you can see how the data would look. And then how it's displayed. And how they customized it for their website. So in this case, you can see here down here, it's sort of branded as a Flourish table, but I could search for Saanich. Let's say I'm interested in that district or municipality. And then I can see all the candidates running in Saanich and scroll across and see, the number of questions that they decided to ask each candidate. So some interesting background questions there. And, you could use forms internally as well. Maybe you don't necessarily want to share information or you don't want to collect information publicly, but for a visualization, but you could also consider using forms as a way to amass candidate information or writing information, again, in a tabular, easy to organize format. Maybe you're not sending it out to the public, but you're just having reporters or your team collect this information and put it all in one place. Any questions about that? Okay. Let's look at Google Trends, which again is a tool that we've touched on another topic, but in case you weren't there or you want a refresher, we'll take a look now at trends when it comes to elections or with election-specific focus searches in mind. So essentially, Google Trends allows you to enter search terms, see what people are looking up on Google. What are people searching on Google? Google Trends is real-time data, and it's shown as a proportion of all searches. So in your selected time and your selected region, searches are results are shown on a scale of 0 to 100, where 100 is the most searched compared to all other searches in that place and time. So we tend to see this in election coverage. Here's a piece that Postmedia did ahead of the 2021 federal election. So they compared Google search trend data using the leaders' names, and then showed how searches varied depending on where people were searching. So which federal leaders were being looked up more or less in which places. So in this case, what you're looking at here, they've done, this doesn't look like Flourish to me. So they've done their own visualization, but it's all using Google Trends data. So this was data, so this is the link to at the bottom. This was data that actually the Google Trends data team amassed, and we'll look at that later. But here's an example of a search that I did, just sort of go back and look retroactively. So in the Google Trends Explore page, and let me just put the link here. But in the Explore page, I've put each of the federal leaders' name. And then Google Trends is automatically set to a 12-month period, but you can see here I've created a customized time range. So I want to look at search interest in these 5 names, search interest for these 5 names, just in the month of September 2021. And you can see here I get a scale showing who had how search interest changed over time during that period, but also a comparison of a breakdown by subregion and even by city. And I can search through each leader here. So I can see, okay, most search interest, relatively speaking, for Jagmeet Singh was in Smith Falls. For Justin Trudeau in Minto, etc. I can also see related queries for each name that I'm searching. So people who are searching for Justin Trudeau all across Canada in the month of September 2021 also searched for these related queries for Aaron O'Toole, Jagmeet Singh, etc., etc. So you can download these visualizations directly. So here, say the interest over time graph, I can embed this as is. Oh, well, something went wrong there, but okay. So I can embed this as is with this HTML script for desktop or mobile. I could also download a CSV file or simply share it as a static image. But again, this is data that I could also customize. I could put in a Flourish visualization if I wanted. For example, well, let's come back to that. I just want to move on first to make sure we have time to look at some other election search tips for trends. So there are some search terms and topics typically used by Google's News Lab data curation team around an election to surface potentially useful political trends data. So these are terms like, for example, platform. And you can see here, platform in this case could be a platform shoe or a party platform. So this is an example where I might want to change my search category to politics. So where the searches are narrowed to politically related searches. So platform, why vote? Terms like speech or rally. And again, because I've narrowed my search to politics, so it would adjust this to include searches that are political or that have political related search terms with it. And then again, if I narrow my search range, so just so we get some, useful results, I'm going to do this again from just September 2021. And then under related queries, again, you can related queries associated with each of these search terms. You can get a snapshot of sort of what kinds of questions people are asking Google around the time of an election related to these terms. So don't have some great results in some cases, but there you go. Also, around the time of an election as well, you can also just search for, and let's see what we come up with our time frame from the last election. You can also just search for the beginnings of questions, again, to get a sense of what are people asking Google. So let's see if we get, again, narrowed for the election period in Canada, narrowed to politics. Let's see what sort of related queries we get related to why. Why did Justin Trudeau call this election? Why is Bloc Québécois a federal party? When do polls close? Who won the debate? How many seats, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're thinking about putting together an election package, it might be worth looking at, and some of these are sort of logical, or they make sense, they're common sense, but you might unearth some type of questions that you hadn't necessarily thought about answering in your coverage, but that people are out there looking for. So in terms of finding search interest, looking at related queries around election time, you can also use Google Trends to get a sense of which term more than others might be used. So comparing between two terms for the same thing. Again, if you're looking at, okay, how can people find my content? So in the chat, give a guess. What do you think was the most searched term between trucker convoy and freedom convoy in Canada in 2021? And if you want, you can actually go to to trends and put in these 2 terms, narrow your search and see what you come up with. We'll do it live too. But drop in the chat if you want, what do you think the most searched term was, the more searched term? If we go to, again, we can do a customized time range, select 1 year, 2021. And you can see that the interest actually really shifts over time. So you can see these huge spikes. I would say overall more trucker convoy, but you can see these spikes where one term more than the other was searched. It kind of goes back and forth, which is interesting. I'm not sure the cause of this, but possibly to do with coverage or major events in the whole process. But kind of interesting to see how the two terms become more or less popular compared to each other over time. You can also you can sign up for Trends email. So you can see in the top there, this is an example of the type of email that comes. So you can select for Canada data. And you can also, I'll put this address in the notes as well, but you can also request custom data from the Trends data team. Depending on the nature of the request and how many resources they have, they may be able to help you or not. But if you are looking at election coverage, federally, the Trends data team usually produces a report anyway. But if you're looking at provincial elections, certainly you could request sort of customized data from the Trends data team for your newsroom. So consider that as a potential resource as well. And within the Trends page, under subscriptions here, so I'm on the menu under subscriptions, I can also create essentially like an alert similar to a Google alert, only for Google Trends. So I've got one daily search trends for Canada, whatever is trending in Canada once a day. I'm from Ontario. I set an alert for Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. To make your own alert, just click on that blue check. And then under trending searches or sort of topic searches, I could type, potentially the name of a candidate, select my region, and then I'll get alerts about that trending topic either once a week or once a month. I just wanted to also, I'm just about to wrap up here, but I just wanted to pull this up. For those of you who haven't explored Pinpoint yet, you can find more here. You can sign up for a Pinpoint account, g.co/pinpoint, and get support at that email address, pinpoint-support@google.com. And I'll share one final screen as well before we go. This is where you can get a certificate showing you completed this workshop and give feedback as well. And I'll include this link in my notes that I send out following this session. So a big thank you to all of you. Thanks to the Canadian Journalism Foundation for making this series possible, for making this series happen. It's been great to meet you all. Don't hesitate to reach out, to get in touch. And I hope to hear from you. Have a wonderful holiday season. And take care, everybody. Thank you.